Yeah.
3, 2, 1,
You
go.
fool!
Welcome.
You fool! We'd
to-
already started. No, don't do that. Welcome to the Power Vision podcast.
Welcome to the Power Vision podcast.
Well, it's quite an echo. Sorry about that. If you're wondering where episode 53 is, much like myself, it was live streamed. So there you go. And I've got to be honest, like last week was really not normal for the channel. Obviously, when the weekend I was on holiday, wasn't, I guess, because there wasn't a Saturday video and there wasn't any streams and there wasn't, there wasn't anything. But the week I came back was really non-traditional as well. We just did a bunch of random shit, like doing the patch notes video on Monday, and of course all the subsequent patches throughout, which are probably going to be the main topic today. I don't want to just talk about Season 4 in general, because now that everyone's got it, it's kind of different. Well, yeah, Season 4's out on PC. Not for us, though. It released 95 minutes ago, as of the time of recording. So, yeah, they're all enjoying that. But this is going to... What?
Chances are, you are probably going to be, not you, Harry, but you, audience, are playing Season 4 as you're listening to this. Either that or you're on some long drive, excited to get home to play Season 4.
I wish I was on a week-long drive. Then I know that when I get home, it will be there for me. So yeah, obviously we're gonna have to. This can't really be opinionated, which is why I want to focus on. The name of the episode is The Road to Season 4, basically. And I think we're pretty much just going to talk about all the experimental stuff, because that stuff genuinely excites me. But before we get into that, Starfield is locked at 30 frames per second. What do you make of that? Well, all of this Xbox Showcase stuff happened, and it wasn't particularly remarkable. It wasn't that bad. People always say, oh, it's a massive fucking L. And I'm just like, what are you expecting? They announced like dozens of new games, and like a lot of them actually look quite good. Like, it's this weird Hades looking thing called 33 Immortals, and the point is that it's a 33 player game. Which just sounds weird, but it's like interesting. And then there was also Avowed got like properly revealed, which I didn't know this. Avowed is actually part of like a pre-existing franchise, which I just didn't know. They've got like these other things that are tied to it. But they said that you don't need to have played anything else to enjoy Avowed. And everyone's like, oh, why doesn't Avowed look like the original trailer? Probably because the original trailer wasn't gameplay.
It's hardly a trailer either, really, is it? It's like a title cinematic.
Yeah,
basically
it was clearly just like, maybe it was in engine, but it was clearly just a CG like animation, basically. That was not in game. And then people were like, why did it look like that? Part of me does wish, though, and I think this is why Avowed's probably going to end up actually quite good, is that I think they have a lot of creative control. Because if they didn't, then they probably would be making, like, because it's obviously Obsidian, they'd probably be making the Elder Scrolls equivalent of New Vegas. And I guess this is that, just that it's not an Elder Scrolls game. And I would have liked that, but the fact that it's not an Elder Scrolls game means Bethesda are probably more hands off of it anyway. So
yeah, they're not forced down to any pre-established lore and that kind of thing.
I would still love a Fallout New Vegas equivalent, though. Elder Scrolls, to be honest.
Yeah,
like
sure
it's still like the same style of game, but it's just from a different developer. Same style of game, same setting, but different depths. I would love that. But like I said,
at this point, it's not quite worth it. It would have been a really good idea like 5 years ago, like so that it would padded out the time between the releases. But now it's too late for padding, essentially.
It might not be, though.
No, I guess not. But that's what Starfield's for.
I cannot. Okay, yeah, Starfield. So they had Forza Showcase, but there was no Halo and no Gears, which were obviously like the two big. Well, they used to be the biggest. Halo obviously used to be the biggest Xbox thing. Like thing the Xbox had, and that's clearly not the case anymore. I'm sorry. I know it's still like the original, and Master Chief is still like an exceptionally iconic character. Yeah, no shit.
Essentially their mascot.
He is, but I think they've changed the mascot. I think the mascot's now Todd Howard. I think the mascot, because they really are pushing Starfield, and it's like their first. It's like the Series X's like first like really big AAA release aside from Halo Infinite, which was obviously a blunder. and it might not have even.
Wasn't Redfall that though?
Yeah, but I mean, they were never going to push Redfall as much as they're pushing Starfield.
They pushed Redfall quite a bit.
Yeah, because they had to. They had nothing else to push. But they've been pushing Starfield since it was announced, or since they bought Bethesda. Because that's the thing. There was a timeline where this wasn't even an Xbox exclusive, and yet now they're putting all their chips into it though now.
I thought it wasn't an Xbox exclusive. I thought it was going on PlayStation as well.
Not PlayStation. Not PlayStation. No.
I thought there was like some sort of agreement that they already like had before.
That was a couple of things, not I think Starfield was one of the things that wasn't that, because Xbox was like, we need this. It's ours now.
They do, in all fairness.
And that will be the same. Well, we'll see. Because
that will be interesting, because it is a single player experience, right? And so it is essentially directly competing with all the single player games that PlayStation has.
Yeah, but they don't do sci-fi though.
No,
I mean, they kind of don't, which is kind of weird when you think about it. It's all. I mean, what is it? Oh yeah, Spider-Man's a nice sci-fi thing. I actually forgot about Spider-Man. Spider-Man's pretty big. That's the only reason I'm slightly interested in having a PlayStation. And I don't even want to spend the money on one, but I think the Spider-Man games look pretty cool. And God of War, to be fair, but not The Last of Us. I've literally zero interest.
Uncharted?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, that is a big one, but they haven't done one in a while, actually. I think because that is The Last of Us guys. They do Uncharted as well, and I think they're just focusing on Last of Us at the moment. Which I'm not going to judge them for. It's not like I'm going to play it. It's not like I can. Just personally, I don't find that anywhere near as interesting as anything else. Not even as interesting as Starfield, because you've sort of commented on Starfield looking pretty generic, like at least aesthetically, and I definitely agree. But I think that's just because it's not necessarily. I don't think they're necessarily going for innovation on like the aesthetic or tonal front. I think they're just going for, let's just do a massive fucking space-based Bethesda game. That's the idea, and it doesn't really go beyond that in terms of being unique, though. To be honest,
I think I don't know. It really depends on where they move forward, because if they use like the default ass, sterile ass, everything as like a bottom line, like things inherently look bland unless you start customizing it, and then it might start getting spicy, then I think that's fine. Like there are some interesting, colorful, dynamic like ship parts or crew members or whatever the other things you can customize are. That is a reason why I'm hyped. I think the sheer amount.
I think the ship building looks pretty like not even necessarily interior customization. I really like the idea of like building a ship like you would build a base, like adding on like modules and habitats,
customizing its interiors, its crew, the actual like character building stuff. Like that is the shit that does me. Like I do not really care about gameplay, because that's my gameplay. The customization, the character creation, and in the RPG sense as well, of like paving your way through your play style.
I mean,
like
Bethesda
melee.
games, especially like Skyrim, it is kind of just like, it is almost like a tabletop RNG, but visualized. As in, the gameplay really isn't the main point. You know, it's literally just about where you take your character
level to get like the next skill or something like that, like the next thing.
It's about where you take your character in that sense, and also where you take your character in the story too, in the sense that, you know, like it's not bad, but like the final boss in Skyrim, like fighting Alduin in Southern Guard, it's not as anywhere near as dramatic as it is literally. You've literally gone to the afterlife to kill this world-eating demon dragon, right? But it doesn't feel that dramatic. It's really just the idea that you've done that is what you're getting, more so. It's not the fact that doing it was actually that crazy. It's just the idea that you're now role-playing as someone who has done that insane feat. Which I feel like, which is why it is actually a pretty good role-playing game in my eyes.
Yeah, because it's like the combat in the game is quite sterile. Like it's just you hit, you charge hit, you hit, you charge hit, that kind of thing. You kind of got to then imagine that it's interesting, right? Like I don't know if you recall like Minecraft animations, right? Where like it's like they like doing flips and it's cool sword battling and all of that. Like I don't know if you watched them growing up. But like it's that kind of thing because actually fighting in Minecraft is just hitting sword, so you kind of just have to like imagine that you're like trading blows in a more interesting way.
Imagine that it's
Which
cooler than it is. Yeah.
yeah, which I think is something either that they would want to kind of reinforce and establish in six, or maybe that could be a step forward in that you don't have to imagine you do look as badass as you are,
Hmm.
and actually like, make the combat is interesting at least visually.
I suppose it's going to be a bit different in Starfield, though. I mean, it's a bit different in shooters in general. Shooters, like especially something like Call of Duty, where people go down in a realistic number of shots. Like, I mean, not that Call of Duty is overly realistic, but people go down, like they said, in a realistic number of shots. Like, it sort of doesn't. There's not actually much imagination there. It's kind of like you are kind of just doing all that stuff. Um, and then also like the
Well,
campaigns, for example, of like loads of like scripted moments, where it's like you're not in control, and that's how most of the cool shit happens. And that's why I like things like Elder Scrolls or Halo. It's not the gameplay itself doesn't involve too much crazy shit because you can't have a lot of crazy shit going on and still be fully in control of your character. This kind of games don't really allow for that very much. But Starfield, like I feel like that might be broken down a little bit, especially with ships. You can't really role play ship combat. You kind of either got to do it properly or don't do it at all. To be honest, it's like
yeah,
what's it going to be? You can't be like you can't imagine that you're trading blows. You're literally shooting parts of the enemy ship or getting parts shot off your ship. It doesn't. You can't really imagine it. I don't know.
yeah, but that's where like challenge comes in, like or like the feeling of accomplishment, that kind of stuff. Is that if you just shot down like a battalion of 5 pirates or some shit, right, and you were on your last legs going into the fight, like you were already fleeing from something more dangerous or some shit, like that kind of mental, holy shit, I fucking did it. That's what that kind of stuff is for. Like that kind of feedback. Um, like I don't know, and I think it's interesting because I would say you need to look at Fallout for that kind of stuff, right? Because that is where Bethesda gets its gun-based combat from. Um, I would imagine, right? Unless they're completely reimagining it. Um, but even that had like the VAT system for the RPG elements. Like it basically turned it into the percentage-based rolling of the dice. It's whether or not you're going to hit, like that kind of stuff. And I am not seeing that in Starfield, right? They're not bringing like a VAT system in, are they?
I think no, I don't know. Not that specifically. I don't. I think there's something that's not too far off. I mean, there's a Pip Boy esque thing as far as I know. Like this watch that you use, and I think they designed this watch literally just so it can be Starfield's Pip Boy. But it's going to be like a merchandise you can buy it, as in like it's that thing, but just as a normal watch. Obviously, in the game, it's not a normal watch. It's basically where your HUD comes from. I'm pretty sure. But I don't think they actually have something like that. I don't know, but I liked the thing that I picked up on that I thought was interesting was that they were like, yeah, you can just use your fists, and that's like an actual like path that you can just take with your skills. You can just use your
Kind of
fists in
annoys me.
space like he was literally jumping around like a low gravity environment, just whopping people with his fists and sending
Kind
them
of annoys
flying.
me that they have to say that. Like that isn't an unreasonable thing,
I
right?
mean,
I think
it's
a lot of role playing games have unarmed as options, and even Elder Scrolls used to, and they just slowly ruled it out, and now they're pretending that they're doing us a favor by re-adding it.
mm.
Like it's not our fault that you stopped doing unarmed as a build, right?
But I
Like,
wouldn't
can you not do that?
necessarily expect that in a sci-fi game though. Like, especially not a realistic
Fair
sci-fi
enough,
game. Obviously,
yeah.
there's lots of crazy, like weird, like anime sci-fi games where they use, laser swords and stuff. I mean, obviously, but and I'm not saying they're doing a favor, but it does still, it does still look fun. I'm not, but I'm not like giving them lots of praise for it. I can't do
Fallout
that.
4 had more fist-based like trees and like weapons than and weapons, fair enough, than like fucking Skyrim. I guess Fallout 3 is probably a more relevant thing since they're probably closer made time. But point is yeah, I'm gonna fucking love using unarmed. That's definitely what I'm gonna do. But also fuck you for taking it away from me in fucking Skyrim, because it's literally just the gloves of the pugilist from the fucking guy in sewers, and that's like
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. I'm surprised. I
Single
mean, I know I'm
skill
not surprised actually that you took
armor.
note of that. Actually, when I think about it, that makes sense for you to like latch onto and be like, "This is the only fucking piece of unarmed like content in the game, really.
Yeah, it literally is. Like, all right, you play Khajiit, they do bonus unarmed damage, which is essentially useless. It's very good, but like it doesn't matter most of the time. And then yeah, pugilist gloves and like a single light armor tree thing gives you more unarmed damage with light armor. Or is it heavy armor? It might be a mod.
It's actually light armor, and that's also a mod. See, that's the thing. I almost said something along the lines of, well, the mod. There's mods that will do it better than Bethesda ever would have done, and I think that's true. But I also don't like giving them that pass at the same time, so I'm not going to. But there are still really cool mods for that kind of thing. I mean, I just like the if I were to do an unarmed Skyrim build, I would combine a couple of different mods. There's like one that adds like they do take the form of weapons, but the weapons are basically just like spells that are contained within your hands. It's like you gain like fire or lightning fists, and then also Ordinator gives like a lot of options for unarmed combat through the light armor tree. So I would do something like that, and then you also just add the One Punch Man mod in as well. Which is like just a ring where your punches just send people flying, which gets especially funny when you do like kill moves. And the unarmed kill moves, one of them is a suplex. So you suplex someone into the ground, and then a shockwave just appears that sends them flying.
The saddest thing is the unarmed kill things in that game are so fucking good. Like genuinely, I thought they were mods in how like fucking.
You just thought it was a mod that you didn't know you had, basically. It's like, what mod is that?
Yeah, well, no, I had a kill moves mod. I assumed it was part of that, but I don't think that added anything to melee. I think that was just all sword stuff. And hell, I'm not even sure what they did do to that. That wasn't a very good mod. But yeah, basically, they're stuck at 30 frames, which does suck. Doesn't bode well. I mean,
they're not actually stuck at it. Well, so okay, they say they're not stuck at it. They say that it's a choice, and to me, I'm thinking, why would you choose? Right? Why would you choose to lock people?
You don't choose that.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
I'm pretty disturbed at how little like backlash there is as well against this, because it's just like, and I can imagine that I can imagine there being good reasons, like as in it might. I can imagine a scenario where they're having a lot of difficulty adding a performance mode. Although I don't know if I would believe them if they actually said that was the case, to be honest. But I can still imagine it being possible that there's some difficulty there. Maybe it fucks with certain things that you wouldn't expect. I don't know. But either way, that is absolutely an option we should have, especially in the modern gaming like sphere. It's actually fine to have. It's fine. It's perfectly fine for your game to not be able to have 60 FPS and also be at the highest like visual fidelity. That's fine as long as you have a performance mode, which pretty much every game does now because it's the standard. Although at the same time, apparently the statistics show that most people choose fidelity over frame rate anyway. Apparently.
Yeah, but that's people's choice. Doesn't mean you get to take it away from them. Even if most people choose it, you still should have a choice.
I mean, I think that's insane though that most people do choose fidelity.
I choose performance all the time because I've never noticed it not be fine.
I'll just choose the best version that stays at 60 FPS. As in, if that means I have to go the lowest graphics to keep it at 60, that's fine. I will. But if it's good, yeah, if it's good at high fidelity though, I'll keep it there.
It's like framey, then I'm like that's like two bad things because the details hurt my eyes.
Exactly, it's not actually that good. So that is something that worries me about Starfield as well. At the same time, we used to play games in 30 FPS just all the time, and no one ever really thought anything of it. And that's not a defense. I'm just wondering if it will not be that bad.
Yeah.
Like in the long run, maybe you'll get used to it very quickly. I mean, it'll probably be very jarring when you switch between games,
The issue is though, is that this is going to be a next gen game, which that implies something that it should actually have more frames than the games from the previous gen. But secondly, that it's going to ask for like 70 quid. It's going to be it's going to have an increased price saying, yes, 70 quid for this game that runs at 30 frames per second. Like, which I think they can probably justify it for themselves and everyone else would justify it because no one's buying it.
Mm-hmm.
No one's buying Starfield. Everyone's just having Game Pass. Like it's just a fact, especially if it is only on the consoles that have Game Pass. It's just not going to be bought.
I think there's a chance of actually making a legitimate difference in the attitude.
Yeah,
Like,
probably. Yeah, I think it probably is. Like people are essentially getting it for free. Um, like that is what Game Pass is doing now, right? Like people spending no more money than they probably already would be, or they're gonna buy it just for that, but they're not gonna buy it. They're gonna buy Game Pass, which is like 11 quid, um, and that's it.
like Game Pass is still the
Right?
best way. Even if you don't have Game Pass already, it's still the best way to buy Starfield. Because I don't care how big it is. If you wanted to, you could definitely beat Starfield in like a month. Obviously, and you could beat any game in a month. So, if realistically, if you're that obsessed with money as well, Game Pass is always the best option. So it's like if you're not going to play it again, or it's going to take a while for you to play it again,
Yeah, like if you're stingy with your money, you would use Game Pass. If you're not stingy with your money, you should still use Game Pass because it's
exactly.
better. But also, like, you would get Game Pass, play Starfield, realize it's a buggy mess and/or you don't like it, and then uninstall it and play other games on Game Pass, and then just have your month of other games, right? Or if you do like it, you would buy it at full price because you're bad with money or you don't care about your money, and you would just to get both, right? Like it's either way. It's just it's Game Pass has changed a lot in how people would consume games and like pay for games. Like I'm always weirded out when I have to buy a game now, right? Like I'm like, oh, I forgot that you have to do this. Like
When
because
you
so
have
often
to, yeah.
I download the Game Pass games, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, this game isn't part of Game Pass, but I need to buy it. Like I don't know, like when we got Rust, what Black Ops 2 recently, right?
We
Not we, me and Tom. And by me and Tom, I mean me. Well, I think he did pay me back for that. So, but yeah,
whoa.
I know it's surprising. I think I actually got him to buy me and my family pizza, and that is why I'm paying it back.
Well, there
So
you
it
go.
worked out.
That yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. That sounds pretty...
Yeah, but basically, I don't know. I think it's ultimately, I think they should be held accountable, but everyone knows we don't really care. Like they should have it a 60 frames per second option, but that it ultimately probably won't affect much. Although you can't deny the signs that everyone gave Redfall shit tons of shit about how terrible it was and how unfinished it was and how buggy it was and all that stuff. And Starfield has
Hmm.
had the exact same problems.
It's
All of
just
them.
the
It's
Bethesda way.
identical.
I think Starfield is going to be it's going to be more finished from like a conceptual standpoint, right? Redfall is not something that Arcane wanted to make, basically. As in, Redfall was something that they were basically made to make by Bethesda, and then also allowed to make by Microsoft. Ultimately, Microsoft actually have more authority than Bethesda, even though um, Arcane were working under Bethesda. But basically, like I don't know, but Phil Spencer, he said that he should have cancelled Redfall. Like afterwards, he said I made a mistake by like they as in they even like they said that this isn't. They told him like Arcane told him this isn't going to go well, and they don't really want to do this, and they were like. And he was like, "Just carry on, just carry on." And afterwards, like after the fallout of it all, he was like, I should have cancelled it. I think, which is kind of wild. I don't know what to make of Phil Swift anymore. Phil Spencer, fucking hell. I don't know what to make of him anymore because like he seems like a good dude, but I don't know if he's doing Xbox much good anymore. That's the thing. He seems like
I mean, that is going to be very interesting because either he's just saying that, right? Like, he doesn't have to mean it. He's not got like a lie detector on his wrist or anything, right? So either nothing's going to come of this, or we might see a lot more games being cancelled, right? Like, because I mean, a lot of every game that's announced tends to come out, at least from Xbox, right? Like
yeah.
they don't seem to pull the plug on anything, and that it results in games like Redfall. And I feel like it was a big enough stink, I would say, to where they might think twice with a game that clearly isn't done, clearly won't be done, and that they're just going to put it out on their name, and they need to realize, okay, pull the plug, and how good or bad that is going to be, because there might be some games that might pull through, right? Like if people just pulled the plug, like if Sony, because that's who was like in charge of No Man's Sky for when it was coming out, was like, no, pull the plug on No Man's Sky, we wouldn't have No Man's Sky, and it pulled itself out of that gutter, right, and became a very good game. Like most people would agree. And so it's like games shouldn't be shitty and terrible and horrific when they come out, but they can pull themselves together. But now, we might see more games that are shot down, and that might screw us over in the long run. But I don't think we would ever know, right? Like, we wouldn't
Starfield
know.
gets cancelled tomorrow. Can you imagine Starfield getting cancelled? Obviously, it's not going to be. But can you imagine?
High profile.
Like, I mean, obviously, it's their big. They're really hinging on it. Like, there's the Xbox Showcase on Sunday. It was like Xbox Showcase plus Starfield Direct. It was half of the show. They're putting a lot of money in. They're just putting everything they have into Starfield right now. Pretty much, or everything they can, I suppose. It's and I think Starfield will be good. Genuinely, I think it will be pretty good. I really hope that they can get like 60 FPS though.
I think it's going to be fine on launch. I think it's probably going to be very, very, very buggy.
Oh no, I know all that, but I think it's going to be a good game.
Guarantee going into it.
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that it's been delayed multiple times, right? Even though it technically never has, right? I mean, they never actually gave it a release date, but they were like, they knew they weren't gonna get it to a reasonable point, and then they kept pushing it further. It seems. Until now, they've got a fucking gun to their head saying you need to release this shit soon. But it's definitely going to be buggy. There probably won't be enough content, I would imagine. Like, they probably cut some content to release it. It's just if you look at the patterns, Starfield is probably going to be rushed out the door. And that's probably what's occurring. That Microsoft is like, we need this fucking game out and we need it to go well.
It is interesting though that would somehow be rushed. That Starfield is somehow going to feel rushed. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the case. But it just, in principle, it just shouldn't be. It's like their first game out of Bethesda Studios in 12 years. It's just not. It really is not excusable, but it's also not gonna. It's probably not gonna hurt them. At the same time, a lot of people do think it might be the last nail, though. Maybe, but at the same time, I just don't know. I feel like it's almost. I feel like it either will be the last nail or it won't have any effect whatsoever, and that means they're basically immortal. As in, Starfield will either kill them or just prove that Bethesda's immortal. Is the way I kind of see it.
I mean, that what if it goes poorly?
Yeah, if it goes poorly, I think it will either really they'll be on the down. I guess on the back foot finally, or it will just prove, or it will prove that they literally can't fail. It will be either one of those, in my opinion.
That as soon as Microsoft got their hands on it, it got worse. Yeah.
Oh, what's the other one?
Well,
Activision.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that didn't really occur, did it? I think that deal actually didn't go through.
I don't know. I feel like we should know. I feel like we should.
I'm pretty sure that shit got cancelled. They're not trying to buy that anymore. But I mean, I was gonna say like Halo, but they always had Halo, so that's not really quite fair. But Rare, I think people would describe, although they eventually did pull it back with Sea of Thieves, like after a couple of years of it being out. But but it is Microsoft has a shoddy repertoire. Segue.
That's not how you're supposed to do it. Well, I mean, you didn't say they would, but you suggested that, and I think it's kind of reasonable. What if they had like Deep Rock at the game showcase? Obviously, they didn't, and in my head, I don't quite know why they would. I mean, Deep Rock's really not a Microsoft thing anymore. But yeah, that happened.
New season coming out at like the exact same time.
I know, but I mean, like Halo Infinite Season 4 is going to come out, 2 days before it on Xbox. That wasn't at the showcase. Like what? Like the trailer for Halo Infinite Season 4 came out yesterday. That wasn't at the Xbox Game Showcase, or even the Xbox Game Showcase Extended, which did show some other new stuff. It's like, what? Why is it just no? Why are they just not pushing Halo at all? I don't.
They're done with it. They're fucking done with it.
They should be, but they're also it's still there though. But it's still
Yeah, because they can still earn profits as long as they don't like put a bullet in it, right? Like it's not going to give them much money, but it's still going to give them money.
yeah. Honestly, it just feels like they're okay with 343 just like scrambling to get a season out whenever they can, and just knowing that it'll still make some money. As long as it's turning a profit, they got no reason to get rid of Halo because I think they want to keep Halo around as an idea still. But it doesn't feel like they are when it has no presence at the game showcase, though. Essentially their individual E3. I mean, like we say, Master Chief is still their mascot, but it doesn't feel like they're treating it that way.
They put him on the fucking next gen box, even though because they wanted to have the new Halo Infinite out with it, but obviously that didn't happen. I think it will be very, very interesting if come next gen, Halo is nowhere to be seen on their like marketing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
As if something else is on the box, like I don't know, Elder Scrolls 6 or something. See if they can pump that out in that time.
But instead, it's going to be replaced with Deep Rock. And we have a bit of Deep Rock news right now is a bit of a abstract concept because I wouldn't say it's news that the new season is out. Everyone who's playing it knows that. Obviously, the only thing that happened recently was Trolls leaving, the sound designer, which obviously we talked about, and we don't need to dwell on that. But it is interesting that this is a good thing actually that I do want to talk about, and it's not going to be the main thing that we talk about, but they got the new season is out, which means they put out the actual patch notes on Steam, and those being the actual patch notes you'll see in game. And they got some things right, and I don't want to take credit for this, although they haven't done this before, so I wouldn't be surprised. So if you look at the original preview for season 4, that they put out like alongside the original narrated trailer, that's like all of the main stuff. But not patch notes, not in patch notes form. The most recent thing they put on Steam was the actual patch notes, so that's everything you saw in the preview, plus all of like the miscellaneous stuff. But it also included the stuff that came later, like the new song. They've actually put that in the season 4 patch notes, and all of like the new weapon balancing, like those pretty major overclock changes. They put all that in there as well, and I was saying that they should definitely do that just to help themselves. And the reason why I'm slightly suspicious of that, I know we're not supposed to take credit for things, but they haven't done that before. They haven't included stuff that's been added in experimental in the final patch notes.
Never added a new song.
No, it's also different. It is different type of content to add after like the initial season.
You never added
what season 4 was going to be
during experimental branch.
Not during experimental, and that's why I think the song obviously wasn't part of experimental, but this is probably the most impactful the experimental branch has been, or at least in since I've been paying attention to it. Certainly, the season 3 one was pretty significant with the shard diffractor getting reworked though, but because that was like a new weapon. That weapon wasn't in the game yet, and it was sort of just being changed before actually coming out. But this experimental branch brought a lot of significant changes in terms of weapon balancing to the point that I'm quite comfortable calling this content. I don't know if you feel the same with how far they went with some of this stuff.
The overclock stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, because it's doing. I was already pretty warm on season 4, definitely not hot, and I had some reservations still, but these overclock changes have done a lot of heavy lifting in making me more excited for it, like genuinely. And though I think the reason why I consider this like actually proper content almost is because this is the kind of stuff that is not going to wear out as quickly at all. And the effect of this kind of thing will be felt in the like pretty long term, I'd imagine. Like, you know, people have said things about how you can like experience all of season 4's content in essentially one mission or like a few missions. That's why I
It was true
considered.
last,
Hmm?
but people will also say that last season was ass. So
Well, I think season
no.
3 was definitely worse than season 4.
Yeah, which I think is really cool how people agree with that, right? That people have like that spat on season 4 have kind of took that back and like, you know what, season 4 is actually all right, and then they realized that season 4 like 3 was ass. Like,
Not
I
everyone
like how
though.
people
It's
have
still
now, like,
not. It's still not 100% there with people understanding that season 4 is definitely better than season 3. Like people are like, oh, you can blitz through all of season 4's like content in a couple of sessions. I've seen that very like today, and to that I say season 3 was way thinner. You know,
yeah.
far thinner. I mean, yeah, grenades will have. You know, we still kind of feel the
You could
effects
have
of new
done them
grenades,
in
but it's
four
not
missions.
huge.
Could have done the grenades in 4 missions, right?
You can
Each
do
grenade,
that. You can, yeah. And the only sort of elaboration there is how different are they on certain mission types, and it's really just like how useful are
well,
they
yeah,
against
but
bosses, I guess.
no, Harry. No, you can't use that because that it doesn't work with their argument, right? If they're saying literally, if you encounter C in a single instance, that's you experiencing the entire piece of content. That's their argument,
Yeah.
right? If you bump into the corruptor once, that's it. The corruptor's done. Nothing more to add. Nothing more to experience. That is all it ever is
I
that
mean,
single.
I do think the corruptor might end up being the most static part, though. To be fair, right? I feel like it's pretty obvious that things like the rocket boots and the randomizer are probably going to have more like long-term variety to experience, right? Because the corruptor is obviously it is a mobile boss fight, but it is still a defined boss fight in how it goes, in what the corruptor does and what you're supposed to do to it. I think there's a limit on how much terrain and biome can influence that, but it's still there. It's still there, and I suppose it is. I mean, it's obvious now. We know this. It's the first thing listed in the patch notes. The corruptor is the main piece of content, or it's like the headliner. You know, which is interesting that the headliner is a seasonal event, which we haven't had before. And people sort of call that out, have been calling it out, but not in the way that I would necessarily expect. Because I don't find it inherently problematic, but people still complain about the lack of something like a new mission type. I'm not inherently upset about that. I just find it slightly confusing that the seasonal event is like the main piece of content. And this actually leads into something that Sniss said today in a video about today, which was a criticism. So first, that's already interesting. Sniss putting out criticisms.
Listen to SNES.
What?
Can't dismiss SNES like they have been Access Chronos.
No,
right?
they can't dismiss Sniss. No, he's sort of a bit confused as why they just seem to be putting a lot of their chips into seasonal events more than anything else. When all that's going to do is bloat the event pool, which is they're already so like it's so. He said like I've saw like maybe one like data deposit in like during season 3 or something, and so like that pool's going to get even more bloated after season 4. It's just like I feel like he basically said they should be able to have you earn scripts from other ways so that they could make something else other than seasonal events. It's like it feels like they're forcing themselves to make something that is an event. You know, Harold could have been a mission type if it wasn't an event, but then I guess, you know, our ghost ship just thinking, oh, but we need a way for them to earn scripts or something, and it has to be this kind of thing. That's basically Sniss's idea. So like, you don't have to do that though. Maybe have people earn script by just using the new stuff, like doing a mission with randomizer or something. That's what he said, which we've said as well, and I think that's perfectly valid. You know, they shouldn't have to make something like Harold every season, in my opinion.
I think adding a new event every season may long term not be a good shout. I think that's definitely fair. I don't think Harold is a good example of that. I think he's pointing out an issue which I do think is prevalent, but the Rockbox needed a boss, and people wouldn't have liked it if it was just another like Nemesis, where it's just a guy.
Although some people think it is still a Nemesis, and I got told I was wrong for saying that it wasn't. Which is still one of the craziest Reddit interactions I've had. Someone's just a bit confused about what exactly the corruptor was, and I just told them, and then people are like, no, it's a Nemesis. It's a Nemesis that just happens to drop play cards. I was like, No, it's absolutely a boss type enemy, and it is also a seasonal event. They were denying both of those things, yet that is exactly what it is. It's just objectively. You just look at the patch notes, and it has a health bar, and this doesn't. So it's like, what am I? I don't know how to talk to these people anymore. I can't do. Just I don't know what to do. But yeah, it, I don't know how much people's minds have changed though from this, like when season 4 was revealed to now. But I think a lot of people have been pleasantly surprised. I think by the overclock additions, and I do think there is a small element of them just trying to do something that would maybe make people happy. I don't know if you agree, because
Yeah. No, I mean, like it was definitely them realizing, oh shit, we need to do more. Like, and like it was that. Even though I would argue the main issue is that there wasn't content in the main two departments that people were used to it being. Not inherently that there wasn't enough numbers of
I
content,
don't think
but
the equipment argument is there anymore. Because
oh, yeah,
honestly,
no,
this season beats out season 3 equipment wise quite
yeah,
significantly, in my opinion. When you
yeah, no,
take the rocket boots, the Rand device beer, which is going to have shitloads of variety, and all of these genuinely significant overclock changes, like just enough where it's the reason why I consider those content is because it's going to give people playtime because it's worth using those again, right? That's why it will give people playtime, like new playtime, and that's why I consider that valuable content. So they really are beating season 3 in
I
terms
mean,
of content on
we
that
both
front.
already saw randomizer or rocket boots as equipment, like the new grenades, guns, and that kind of stuff. But it was kind of a little bit more nuanced and simple face-on equipment in your terminal. But then these new overclocks were that
Yeah,
the simple as new equipment for you to actively tinker with and use going into a mission. That was a piece of content that it didn't have going into this.
yeah.
Um, it does now.
And I think they're all
So
going to be worth using, but obviously, we did basically get 2 new overclocks out of this. Basically, obviously, not on top of what's already there. They are replacements. Double barrel, obviously, a bit less so because it's still called double barrel, right? Though, but that's the only thing. It got completely changed. Like yeah, it does half your ammo now, but it actually halves your ammo now, right? It's like a pretty different situation to the original double. It's a completely different situation to the original double barrel, and of course, manual guidance cutoff just got replaced. And I do wonder, like Rocket Barrage interests me in the sense that, like we've established, it's a fairly simple unstable. So I wonder, was that where did that come from? Was that one of the prototypes, or was that just off the cuff? Given that it's quite simple, I would be
I think
interested to know.
as a prototype, I think that they. I mean, right. That is a simple overclock for them to make. That is numbers, right? They visually didn't have to change anything, right? There was no new, for example, like Plasma Burster. The it looked different, right? The rockets changed visually, and that requires a lot of effort and work put into it. But the new one is just, it literally is just like numbers got changed, right?
Mm,
That's all it really was. And that is inherently easier to do like instantly or in a very short amount of time.
yeah,
So there's an argument for there was the idea thrown around beforehand, and they were able to do it quickly because that is something that is able to be done quickly. Or that yeah, he already had that like in his pocket ready, like like the one guy that was had a bunch of overclocks in his pocket.
mm.
It's like, oh,
Well,
you need a
that
parity
yes, but
overclock. You have this.
that's why it still strikes me as a bit odd as it being a replacement because I don't think I'm not saying manual guidance cutoff wasn't good. Manual guidance cutoff was one of the weak cleans. Like I think people just sort of agreed on that. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it was also a bad clean, which is pretty close to the worst thing possible in Deep Rock.
Yeah,
But at the same time, why can't they just add Rocket Barrage instead of replacing one? I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a big loss. It's not a loss at all. But why couldn't they just added it? I don't know. Um, it's kind of it doesn't bother me, but I'm still wondering why they had to replace
I feel
something
like
instead.
they probably uh, saw it the same way we would, right? They just added a new overclock, just added one to the only to the hurricane. People were like, "Huh?"
But
I
they
mean,
did.
Yeah, but they didn't though.
I know they replaced one, but
Surface
that
level
does.
technicality, they didn't, and I think that's all that really matters.
But
Because genuinely speaking, that's all people really think.
but they did. If
It,
you think about it, they still surface level
people
did
don't.
as well. If you just spin it in that they took one away and added something else, because that is also what they did. That's what replacing is. So they took away something, but they added a new overclock in its place. So they did add a new overclock. It's like that's still that part of it is still true. But obviously, I guess they're not treating it that way. I mean, if I look at the actual season 4, but the official, these are the non-experimental patch notes we're looking at now. If I go down to the Hurricane, yeah, replaced the clean manual ads cutoff with the new unstable rocket barrage. They use the word replaced, which I guess is their way of getting out of that problem. I suppose. Yeah, but that's I don't know if that's the most interesting one, or that's like the most surface level interesting one, in that they did replace an old one with a new overclock. But I feel like the one that's getting the most attention is absolutely double barrel.
Yeah. I mean,
Because
they
it
got
would be.
something in every single one of the patches, right? Like,
Yes, it did. Because there were 3 experimental bug patches, which is enough because you just look at all the tweaks. First of all, you look at all that stuff together. I think season 4 is going to be very polished, by the way. Like, they've done a lot of work in just tweaking things. And I think like this is something that people have been in agreement on, that season 4 is in general. If you take all of the individual things that it added, it's all very well polished and very high in quality if you take everything like on its own,
yeah, I like
which we
how
expected.
I saw someone make a comment, like just like on the Reddit, and they were like, season 4 is a season where like it focuses more on like itself than adding new content, because like, and it is more in like the terms of like some games do that, right? They like a lot of games do that really. Apex Legends is an example of recent ones where instead of adding a new character or adding new stuff, like I mean, I think they did add a new gun, but that's not that huge. They basically are like, fuck it, we need to focus on the game. It's in an unhealthy state, and they like revamped and reworked a bunch of stuff. People are seeing this update as more of that than the typical type of just no more content.
They
Which
definitely
I think,
should be, and people are, but not everyone is seeing it that way. But also at the same time, Ghost Ship shouldn't have to just convince everyone they're doing the right thing. I think they are doing the right thing, and I think season 4. I like the idea that it feels more like an update than a season. Like, I can't deny that season 4, like from a season theme standpoint, is season 3.5, but it's also like a decent update in its own right. It's just it's a bit weird. It's not so much a season as it is an update. As in, like, yeah, the seasonal stuff just feels like it's a bit tagged on
genuinely,
to season 3, but everything else feels like just a decent sized update. Still not necessarily worth the time taken.
oh yeah, no, seriously. Like, if this season took 5 to 6 months, which is what we theorize as how long they actually spent doing this season,
Well, I think it's more like 4 to 5. To be honest.
maybe. But I'm like, even like, I'm not sure if lowballing or highballing is the right word here, but like, even if they took like only a month or two to do the event stuff and like all that jazz, like they didn't take like it would have been a completely different reaction, right?
There's
Because
still like
everyone
an
would rightly think
there's
that
still
this was
objectively a month and a half added onto the weight that they weren't working on season 4 in. Like, there's still that to factor in. There's still at least a month and a half
which is
of the
why I
weight
think
that wasn't spent on season 4.
I think we need to understand that this season was 5 to 6 months of content we got and 1.5 months of events overhaul. I think if you lump it all together, which people are not doing, which I don't blame them, it's not in the patch notes that events got overhauled. But
No.
I think if it gets out there that you know a good amount of this time they spent working on this season, they spent working on holiday events, then you can really look at this the time they spent, not inherently this season, but the time they spent from season 3 they spent on improving the foundation of this game, um, making events more engaging and something it was worth like doing and stuff like that, like all of them throughout the year.
Yeah.
And obviously all of them they have added like normal enemies to the normal pool, the boots, the beer, like all that stuff. It is foundational content that they did this season with The extra bit being bolstering the much needed Rockbox arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
As in,
look at both of them like that,
they did not have the means to kick off a new theme. That would not have been good for the game in this state. That would have just been bloating things even more. And that's why I don't think this is copium. I am almost thankful they didn't just slap on like just a new warning or mission type just for no reason, because that's just adding more. That's just adding more bubbles for the Rockbox when they only need just the one. Like after season 4, it's just all going to be Lift Phage Outbreak, and I think that's fine. Maybe, I don't know. But as in, I feel like they would have just been forcing themselves to do that. But whereas they could have been making all of this other stuff instead, which they did, which they
yeah, I think this is the annoying thing currently is that I think we both agree that this season was actually like ideal, very very ideal, and yet it is by far the biggest backlash they've gotten since removing the overclocks grind, and that thing they dealt with pretty quickly, and everyone was more than happy. Yet people like the incredible amounts of volatile anger and constructive criticism quotation marks in that some people did.
I think
But there
most of it was. I think most of it was constructive, to be fair.
yeah,
Or at least,
like,
I think
it
most
was,
of it was fair. At least I wouldn't.
it
I
was
wouldn't.
okay, but no one gave any type of criticism beforehand, right?
No.
So even if it was all constructive, they're still like, holy shit, this is a lot of criticism, right? The first time they got that was for probably one of the best ideas they've had, like the best time. Like they finally were like, okay, let's not make the season 3 mistake of just adding a new thing because we need to, and let's add new equipments because we can't, we have to fill in the icons of guns. Like they got far less backlash for season 3, which was a far worse idea, than they did for season 4, which was the best idea. And that's
Yeah,
kind of
season
annoying.
4. No, all season 3 did was check the 2 main boxes. Yet season 4 is like checking literally every other box that season 3 didn't check. And I feel like you kind of have to have both, and that's why I think there's a chance that, I mean, obviously this was definitely worse than the backlash to something like season 2, but at the same time, season 2 didn't do they noted that it was very it gained them far less players than season 1 and 3 did, and yet they've chosen to do another follow-up season. And I think there's a very good chance that despite the criticism, they're actually going to stick to their guns, because it pays off when the new themes roll around anyway. Even if we have to wait a year for a new theme, it still pays off. And those ones can be the big headliners, but I think they're probably, I think there's a good chance that they're going to continue doing follow-up seasons. They're going to continue being a bit like this, and I think that's ideal for the game, to be honest.
It's fine, but genuinely, they need to know that the follow-up seasons need to be shorter than the other ones.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Yeah.
Like,
Well, season 2 took slightly less than 6 months to come out, which is actually quite impressive when you consider how long season 3 and 4 took. Season 2 actually felt like really short, or season 1 felt really short. Because there was so much in season 1, and season 2 actually took less than 6 months to come out.
Yeah, that is what you would want aiming for, right? Like if they are like not insistent, but if we're talking like 2 seasons a year, we're talking like probably like I would say like 8 months on the big season with the new big content, with the new big theme, and then like the 4 months on like the good shit, being the actual juicy stuff that like reinforces foundations and builds on stuff like that.
But that also makes the follow-up
Maybe
season longer, though, and like possibly it's going to wear out more as well. Like, for example, if we, and I don't think it's going to be the case, but if we go with that idea, we'd have to wait like 8 months from season 4 to season 5, and I don't think that would work for most people. I don't
yeah, I guess people, because it's not like that. If season 4 was 4 months, people would be fine with that, kind of, not entirely, but that is still a long time. I mean, I guess there's a thing like 7 and 5 is probably more accurate and more preferable. But yeah, give them enough time to work on a huge big one, and then the next season is like tying up some loose ends they didn't quite get to do, and doing some more foundational stuff like the season we got this time. That kind of pattern would be pretty nice. I don't know if you know, because it would essentially be one big update season every year.
Yeah.
With like the actual juicier one after that is not less talked about, so it doesn't gain them many, players, but it is what the game needs. Like um, the
Yeah.
update that players need, and then the update that games need, like next to each other. And I think that you technically, as bad as everyone, not everyone, as bad as anyone with an eye can see that season 3 was, what it did for the game was incredibly good.
Season 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the player base, Harry.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Sorry.
I was just like naming it. But like literally, like the game shot into the zeitgeist. Everyone has probably heard of Deep Rock Galactic now because of what season 3 did. Like,
I
you
don't know if,
that.
but you see, I'm of the opinion that season 3 didn't have to be season 3 specifically to do that. I think it was literally just down to the fact that it was another big new theme. I don't think it was
Yeah.
anything specific about what it was. It's not the fact that it was Rockpox. It's just the fact that it was a new theme, and Deep Rock was on the up anyway. And it was like, oh, they just put out another big new thing. That was all it was. It wasn't anything specific about it, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, the actual details of season 3 could have been better, but
I think the details of season 3 were irrelevant to the fact that it did so much for the game, though. I think it was very, very theoretical. I think it
did well.
Yeah.
And so you've got to give it that. And because I do not see season 4 doing that to the game.
No,
I would like for them to release the player charts at some point sooner than probably the next anniversary stream. But
hold on, that's not when they did that, is it? I thought it was like every year, right? I mean, which is also the anniversary. I thought they did it at the end of the year, right?
Oh yeah, they do that as well. Yeah, they did both. They showed the player chart during the anniversary stream when they were talking about it, and they also they had the year in review sheet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to deny that it took a while, but I mean, part of me is still somewhat surprised that they were comfortable doing another part 2. At the same time, there's a very strong theory kind of shared by us that they might. I don't think they were that comfortable with the fact that it's more Rockpox, right?
It really kept
when you look at the marketing up to the key art, the marketing, this didn't include Rockpox.
No, they didn't push Rockpox at all in any way, shape, or form.
No,
mainly because it was just more of an introspective season than a Rockpox season. Like genuinely, I don't think they treat or care about the Rockpox as something worth pushing this season. Like think about it, the patch notes. How many Rockpox based changes did they make? It was like they had to fix a bit with the corruptor, didn't they? They had to like get rid of some of the puddles effects, or like the puddles.
Are you talking about the experimental patches mainly? Yeah. So it was all more about. It was actually all more about things like the rocket boots and like the new generic enemies and other stuff.
It was way more about that stuff. They really didn't spend much time or care about much of the Rockbook stuff. Obviously, they fixed issues with them, but as far as probably, I mean, I guess maybe they nailed it on the head. And all the balance is concerned with the Rockbox. Nothing occurred there really. Like I think they slightly changed exploders and like you freezing the breeders. They did something, but like,
I mean, that wasn't even a Rockbox thing specifically.
Yeah,
that was just breeders in general.
Right, yeah. But yeah, they barely did anything. But the fucking Stingtail, they touched multiple times every single patch note. Rocket Boot was frequent. Randomize a bit every time, but only really because there was a bug.
True. So, yeah. I mean, there's still a thing about the randomize a bit, and I agree with Sniss on this once again, that it should randomize your loadout between each deep dive stage. Obviously, I think Ghost should actually want to do that, but you can see why that would be difficult to do, right? Because your ammo's meant to carry over, you know?
The fact that you have to like save your nitro and that, I would imagine that they save your build as well, right? Then that's like part of the core shit they probably couldn't change.
Yeah. Anyway,
I don't blame them for that, but yeah, it's literally I don't know. I think they knew what we knew, that the
Oh, I think it happened. Okay, so I'm probably going to pause in a moment until Tyler comes back quickly. He's been having some bad internet
Now
issues
they're going to
today.
move on.
Oh, what? Hello, you're back. You cut out for a bit,
Hello.
and I was like, "Oh, it happened." I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, I mean, it's still not perfect, but it's not as bad as it was.
No,
When
we like lost like the last 10 seconds of you.
basically, they don't really. They just wanted to get it over and done with the rock box. They
Yeah,
wanted to fill out. They wanted to add the diversity that it damn well needed, and then call it a day. And I think they have. Um,
I think they did. I personally, I like the look of all of the guys. And I'm very excited to have Rockbox swarms in normal missions first of all, but also just obviously you can see those guys just by going into a lift page outbreak as well. So that's all well and good. And I think they're all good choices too. But I'm specifically like the fact that they just added a new breeder is just kind of just a weird thing, because we've got multiple types of exploders. We've even got multiple gear bombers, and of course we've got plenty of spitters. But that's just like a new breeder variant, huh? Okay, sure, that's kind of neat, and I just kind of appreciate that. I just think that's cool. And also, the breeders aren't part of swarms anyway, like normally, so that's still going to be interesting. As in, I don't know if the breeders spawn in rockpot swarms because they don't spawn in normal swarms. Does that mean they're only going to be on lift phage outbreak? I don't know. We'll see. There was something I was thinking about actually earlier when I watched the release trailer. Something that I feel like they should have looked at, but I actually can't remember what it is now. I feel kind of stupid.
Is the release trailer any different than the?
No. I feel like they could do better with the release trailers. Maybe it should, because there's no text. I feel like it should like bring things up. It should be like new overclock tweaks and stuff like that, and it should show all like different stuff. But it's just it was pretty basic. I mean, the release trailer is like a minute and a half. It really does have to focus on the headline stuff. But there was like dozens of shots of the corruptor that didn't really add anything. It was kind of just like I don't know. That's not that important though. But anyway, yeah. Those damn overclocks. I mean, we've got to just cover double barrel basically, because double barrel was also one of the bad cleans, and that was arguably the worst clean, like in terms of it being a downgrade. Obviously, Lazy maybe
widely known.
Yeah.
Thing as well. Everyone and their mom knew how bad double barrel was.
Oh yeah, and so it just started. It started very surprising, but honestly, still quite different to how it ended up. Still, but it was still the first thing they did was still quite surprising, which was just adding the blast wave bonus. But that's all they did at first, right? It was still a clean. They just added a bit of a blast wave bonus, and it's like, oh shit, they're touching double barrel. Is it good now? And like people are like, yeah, it's actually pretty good. If you take the blast wave damage bonus as well, you can blow grunts away pretty easily. Okay, that's something. And then you go to the next experimental patch, and suddenly it's changed to a balanced overclock. They upped the blast wave damage even more, and like added like a shot spread penalty, which obviously is fine because it does like 110 blast wave damage per shot anyway. Like it's really not a problem, and that's actually 220 per shot now. Although I do think that's if you take the upgrade, and obviously people are saying that it's like a contender for just for damage, because it's just a lot of damage. Like not even just crowd clearing.
I it's probably gonna be one of my most used boomstick things, like for sure.
Oh, definitely, absolutely for me as well. Yeah, obviously.
I mean, it's a cold day in hell when we're looking at the boomstick and we're like, okay, special powder, it is what it is. Jumbo shells, it is what it is, and double barrel are like what we could argue is like the pinnacles.
But it's not double barrel anymore, though. That's the thing. It's not the original double barrel. It's still called double barrel.
Honestly, it's double barrel. It is still and double barrel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't consider it double barrel anymore, even if it's still called that. Like, because if you go to the last patch, they finally put the nail in the coffin of like it actually does half your ammo. It's not any kind of bullshit. It just half the ammo. So now I just see it as an overclock that just half your ammo, but just gives you a shitload of blast wave damage to compensate for it. So I think it really shouldn't be called double barrel anymore, to be honest. It should be called double blast. Yeah.
Trouble.
Double trouble. No. I mean, if they wanted to be really cool about it, they would like do something special powder and somehow turn it into an unstable. Because that's to me is almost one of the best things about this. Is literally just that the Boomstick's Overclock selection isn't going to look so dumb anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it's actually a better No, it's not great. I think it's still like the only one with one unstable overclock. But you know, it's different now. And I think Scouts secondary still have a weird thing going on with like their composition of overclocks. You know, except the Bolt Shot, because it's like the Boomstick. It used to have like 4 cleans and then one of the other 2, right? Which is weird enough. Now it's even a bit weirder. It's like 3 cleans, then 2 balanced, then 1 unstable, which is like kind of weird but kind of neat. But then look at the Zukov, where it's like 1 clean, 1 balanced, 3 unstables. It's just like, huh? Poor thing.
Yeah.
So, and they definitely need.
They didn't do everything, but they definitely did some things, right? They tackled the king. That I think everyone would universally agree. You know,
They tackled the king of They tackled the king of all 3 classes that had a king of bad things. You know, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, bad things, but also a king of good thing. Like neurotoxin was widely regarded as one of the neurotoxin payload was regarded as one of the strongest things in the game, also as one of the least fun strongest things in the game. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Notice how a lot of people would say, you know, the volatile bullets / burning hell build is very, very strong, probably just as strong as neurotoxin. But they didn't touch that because that's really strong and fun.
I mean, the thing is though, burning hell could be nerfed though. Burning hell could, like, as in you could give it an ammo penalty and it'd be just fine. And that's why I think they should do the same thing basically they did to neurotoxin, because they added an ammo penalty to neurotoxin as well. They did an ammo penalty. They reduced the AoE size bonus, and they also increased the AoE damage penalty. But they also removed the direct damage penalty, which is why it's kind of weird that it still has an AoE radius bonus to me. Because how I see what they're doing is kind of making neurotoxin a bit more single target, not single target DPS, but more like you got to like poison enemies one at a time, but you still have enough ammo to hit poison every enemy. But you're still kind of meant to do it one at a time. You can't quite. It's already had this effect. You can't quite just paint a horde with neurotoxin as easily anymore. But that's what I sort of see them as having done with it, and I mean, it seems to be that way, especially with taking away ammo. But yeah, they knocked it off its throne, but it wasn't in a good place on its throne. It was more like a corrupt king, like a dictator. It kind of needed to go because it was on the throne, but it wasn't making good use of its power. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah, and it just it wasn't a healthy OP thing. And I think they knew that, and they knew that it was one of the few things in the game that you could nerf and people would be okay with it.
Yeah, and they also
they didn't nerf it that bad.
No, and they also buffed Carpet Bomb, which was like the only weak overclock on the Thunderhead.
Yeah,
even then, not hugely weak.
S beforehand, it's an even firmer S now.
It's yes, yeah, it really is. It sounds kind of funny, isn't it? Yeah. Oh god. I mean, obviously that wasn't. We talked about like they did. I don't want to use the term king of bad things. That's so dumb. But sort of like I guess the Nadir being like the lowest point of the classes they kind of touched basically. If you took double barrel, plasma burster missiles, and the Sabata
yeah,
as sort of driller's low point. As in engineer, I guess that means engineer doesn't have one. I don't know. There's still some things I would change.
Apparently it was Spinning Death.
Spinning Death. I'm still so glad they did that though, because I really like Spinning Death, but it was also kind of hard to justify using because the ammo penalty was a bit too much.
Other than Inferno, hard to justify using.
Yeah, but Spinning Death's different enough. Like, as in, it's actually a lot better at single target damage than anything else. It's just like weird. Well, I mean, yeah, Inferno is the strongest one, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Spinning Death is that is the only engineer overclock that got changed. And I don't think it's the only one that needs tweaking, to be honest. But on that front, on the front of what else they could have done, in my opinion, I think they did everything they could have done within the time, because I don't think there's any other time that they can do this kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't think they can just do this mid-season. Like people say things like, why can't they sprinkle these changes like throughout the season to like spice things up? Well, first of all, most people don't actually care, unfortunately. Um, that's just the truth of it. Most people don't care and don't notice these things. Well,
I wouldn't say like anyone that knows about it is like kind of like cool, yeah. A lot of people probably don't even have the overclocks. Secondly, but I think if you were 2 to 3 months into a season and you had a little drop of content which was a single or maybe like take the latest example. What was it? It was two things, wasn't it? In all fairness, it's actually pretty good two things. I mean, it was the double barrel slight change, wasn't it? Um, to this stuff and the new overclock, which, in all fairness, that's a bad example because actually was pretty good. But if you got a replacement of one overclock and a slight touch up to another, and that was the only bit of content you got after like a couple months, what?
It's like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, like sure, you wouldn't be like, "Thanks, Ghost Ship." You would be like, "Is that it?"
Yes,
and you know damn well,
exactly.
like it is literally like you can pretend to act humble all you want. If that's all you got, you know that would be the response. Like, even though it still would be cool, it was just I don't know.
I'd love
but
it,
that's why,
certainly. But I mean, that's what I mean by I think this is the best. This is the only time they can really do stuff like this because, in between seasons, they're working on the next season, and this stuff is not headliner content. It's not even like close to sub-headliner content, really. I mean, I think it is, but obviously, the truth is that it's not. And the experimental branch is the best time to do that because they're not in a position right now to be working on season 5. They're still not. They're going to be doing maintenance on season 4 for at least a week or two before they move on. So the experimental branch, that's a time where they can't make anything new, but they can do this. They can do this stuff. It's the best time to do it because it's pretty much the only thing they can do aside from just bug fixes. So that's why I think this could start a trend only because by virtue of the pretty okay overclocks that they buffed, there's a lot that they could buff now because of the ones that they showed they were willing to buff. Just okay, you're gonna buff spinning, death, and snowball. Okay, what about
that's like opened up like half of them
exactly? Yeah. So I feel like there's something that could come back during experimental branches, and I think that excites me. And I don't, and that's the thing. I think they did do as many as they could within this time period. And they were like, yeah, they just made as many overcooked changes as they possibly could, and it's just like, okay, we're just going to stop now. We've got to focus on making sure season 4 works, and then we'll move on to season 5, and maybe this stuff will happen again in season 5 experimental. That's how I sort of see it, but it's all good stuff. And yeah, the hurricane thing, because obviously hurricane to me might be done now. I've had some pretty long-standing but minor issues with the Hurricane, and when I thought about it, they really just circled back around to its weaker links. I think some things need to be addressed, like armor break and tier 5 maybe, but it's not in the need of like a Sabata-style rework. It's just not. It was its worst aspects were its weakest links being like plasma burster missiles, basically, and they've really just jacked it up. They fixed it and made it stronger. So it's going to be worth using, finally. I mean, I used it last night, and it was actually fine, but I still can't stand I can't stand by the missiles, deleting themselves when hitting terrain. And they got rid of that, and they made it work properly in that sense. So that's basically what I needed to do. But then they made it even stronger on top of that. So, okay, cool. That's brilliant. And then they also tackled the other weak link, which is just, it's a clean, so it's not really damaging the overall identity of the weapon. But manual guidance cutoff was bad, and they just replaced it with a brand new unstable overclock. And you said that like it was probably very easy to do. And I absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But it's still, in my opinion, it's good that it exists. It's like it's something that should exist. The Hurricane doesn't have an ammo overclock. This is like mini shells for the Hurricane. And I feel like gunners primaries don't have that. Like none of them do. You don't get on the minigun. You don't get that on the Thunderhead. But we have it now in the Hurricane, and I think that's pretty cool. I still take issue with the fact that it removes missile guidance. I still just because there's too many of them that do that.
It had to have some kind of semblance to it because remember, like, when we talked about it like ages ago, that you were actually trying to see like why is it even here? Like, the point is that it allows you to kill things you're no longer looking at, right? And that's why I kind of liked its place because I find that an issue with the hurricane in that if you're like, okay, I've shot enough rockets, the let's say fucking spitter is dead, right? You shot rockets towards them, it's going over there, and you then look away, it's not killing it anymore, right? The rockets
Yeah.
aren't doing anything, but you have to then continue to look at it, or it isn't doing anything, right? Like, so I don't know. It was annoying. It's an annoying part of the hurricane, and that clean was to kind of fix it. Um, while keeping it as a default, because obviously there are still other things that turned it off. But I think this is a more extreme version of that.
Yeah.
This is where it's like kills things fucking instantly. Just boom, you shoot at him, dead. You move on. You look away earlier, like stuff like that. I don't know. Like, it still solves the same problem that attacked, but obviously, yeah, it does turn off guidance. But I think that should not have guidance. But I think there are some other ones that should just get it back. Um, like I feel like salvo module should probably get guidance. I know
Ooh.
that's no, but I think it should shoot out. Like it still should be the shotgun at close range. It it's slow turning speed, but eventually it will all come back together.
I know.
And
I mean, I love that idea, but that would be pretty like gnarly. I don't know how they would feel about that because then you could because obviously mid range would be a bit weird, but then suddenly salvo module actually becomes an amazing shotgun and an amazing sniper. You know, so I'm not
yeah,
sure how they would feel about that.
but that's something that like I feel like they might be willing to try with these new types of things. Like
Yeah,
I would really like it if this does become a theme where they light and loose do this stuff, right? Because obviously they used to kind of, and they have this time tackled it properly, directly, actively, purposefully, other words like that with the Sabata, right? They thought about it and made decisions, and it wasn't a quick thrown together like, hey, we can do this to this gun, or we can do this to this overclock, that kind of thing. It was
yeah.
a direct attack and slash repairing of something.
So you're saying that
Um,
like the balancing might become like a divide between the one deliberate big one, and then also just a bunch of random stuff. But also
I'm saying that
you
would
know
be pretty ideal. Yeah,
But
like
also, obviously, be careful. Like, make sure it works. And obviously, I feel like they have. They haven't had to tweak all of it because it seems to have gone down well. But I think if it didn't go down well, then they would walk some of it back. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it is fair to say that they do sort of set up certain trends for themselves, and they do sort of follow up on these kind of things. I think the weapon reworks is actually a big one that makes this these overclock tweaks like a very good candidate for like a recurring trend. Because obviously we've had like weapon reworks pretty much every season. I can't remember if season one had something like that. But you go to season two, you get like the sludge pump. You get season three, you get the GK2. Season four, Tabata. That seems to be something that's going to keep up, and until like they can't. I would honestly say it's really only maybe the stubby and the coil gun anyway that really could do that are going to get that treatment if any. But they still do these things. As in, they still sort of introduce these things that they will continue, or at least continue until they can't be done anymore. And I hope they do the same thing with these overclock things, because I think the floodgates they've opened means there's plenty that they can do this to, but it will still stop eventually. And that's why they should keep it up, because that work will be done eventually. So I just hope they don't leave it on the table, because it is finite, but there is still more to be done, So I hope they don't leave it behind, and because I think it's really cool. Like I said, it's done a lot for me for making it's made season 4 a lot easier to defend for me, basically.
it's not just that, but it did change a lot of people's minds and got a lot of people hyped, right? Like everyone was dooming and glooming. They dropped that patch notes, and everyone is now just outwardly hyped for this season. It was that easy. First of all, because I think people never had that big of an issue. I think it was that people were slightly disappointed, and there were some louder voices that convinced them to push it further than they probably would have. That's how I see it, at least. That like people were kind of peeved, like okay, this season is less than I
Peeved.
thought it was. which I think is fair because considering the time, it was less than it should have been. Um, Obviously, just looking at time though, you could think that. But then I think some people that went into this expecting this and wanting to be disappointed shouted the loudest, and everyone kind of agreed. And now that those people have kind of shut up because either they've had their fun, or because people have realized, hey, it's actually not that bad. Everything's kind of flipped, but not really all the way, right? People haven't changed their mind about how disappointing this season is, but they've just come to terms with the fact that it's still going to be fun and still going to be good anyway. And I guess that's the current situation. Is how I
Yeah,
see it.
I guess a lot of people still can't really get over like the lack of headliners, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And part of me is still no, I'm not upset about that actually. In fact, I'm actually more not excited, but I'm actually more happy about that than anything else. But it does still it's still interesting to me to think about why Ghost Ship themselves did that, or rather didn't do that. As in, did they expect that to go down well, that they weren't adding something like that? Something like a new mission type or new weapons? Or did they just not think about it? As in, I think they made a good decision not to pursue that this time around. But did they think it would go down well or not? I mean, they should, because they shouldn't have thought it would go. I wouldn't have expected it to go down well if I was in their shoes. So I just hope that they had like a good like impetus behind that, and they weren't just I don't know.
They didn't come out like blindsided, like what? We didn't expect
Yeah,
this.
I hope that internally they weren't surprised by that, because that would kind of concern me, as in because that should not be surprising. I feel like it's very easy to see why. I do hope though that over time more people understand why, basically.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would just be fair on them for people to understand why, basically. I got like a note here that said I just made a couple of notes last night just to maybe help us, and it was like, could they have had overclock tweaks as a major point of season 4? And obviously, I didn't bring that up earlier because they do now. As in, I brought the fact that they do now. The fact that it's in the main patch notes is really, really good, and it's a good sign that they sometimes they do kind of know how to. They can help themselves sometimes. They put the new song in, they put all the overclock tweaks in because that stuff is worth telling people about. So thank God they actually did that. I think that might help a lot of the people who aren't like tuned into the discourse. There's a very good chance that because technically most people who play the game aren't really taking part that much in the online discussions, or really even at all. At the same time, those people, there's still a good chance that a lot of those people still would have been disappointed. And they'd be like, they might have gotten to the end of the patch notes to be like, that's it. But it's like, oh wait, new music, holy shit. So I think those things might help. I mean, I don't know what the average person is going to think, and I think about this sometimes, that the truth is we're not going to know what a majority of people actually think about season 4. It's just the vocal minority, really. But at the same time, it's not a small number, especially in Deep Rock's case. There's a lot of vocal people.
I wouldn't say vocal minority. I'd say like vocal, like 50%. Like
The vocal 50.
and there's probably no more than like maybe 100,000 people that have the game installed and play it semi-regularly, with like 50,000 probably actually playing it like once a week, I would say. Maybe probably, well, that was like the all-time peak of Steam, right? It was like 50,000. And I think considering that doesn't count the Xbox and PlayStation, and that's about it actually. Like I guess Xbox Microsoft version on PC, like we're probably looking at like when season 3 launched, like 200,000 people, maybe highballing. But
Welcome to my crib.
yeah,
Let me show you what I've done with
like 25% of those people are still around. So I think it's probably like 50,000 people are total chilling. And there's normally like 2,000 people active on the Reddit, like at any given moment, let alone throughout a day. With a lot of people on the Discord as well. It's one of the most active Discords out there. As in, it's like top 10, I think. So I think you've got like at least 10 to 20,000 people actively talking about the game online. Which
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
probably true. Yeah.
considering, I think there's probably 200,000 people that actively care about it and have it like as something that they would play. Um, that's only when there's like a brand new season kind of deal. At least that's how I see it. So I think that it's not a minority. I don't think you should see it as such, even though it may technically be in the end of the day, because that was still only like 20-30%.
I think it is a numerical minority, but I think they actually, and this might seem a bit like rude, but I think they're probably more valuable. Not
Yeah, I think it's
in the
enough
sense
of
that they do
a
provide, like providing feedback inherently makes them a bit more valuable. I think.
it's enough of a pool of like people where you can accurately gauge the opinions of the entire community.
Yes, I think that's true. I think they do, on average. I think if you average it all out, they probably. I don't think there's an opinion that isn't represented in the forums necessarily.
Yeah, and I think if the let's say 10,000 people on Discord and Reddit are disappointed with the season, there's a high chance that like the 30,000 that doesn't even contribute to or participate in any of that are probably thinking the same thing if they've even seen it, right? Um, like yeah, like. And plus, in the end of the day, the people that care about the game most is inherently the only people worth listening to. Like, Ghost Ship shouldn't entirely care about the opinion of a player that downloads it when season 3 came out, played it for 2 games, and then like uninstalled it, like anything like that, right? Like,
Well,
it
they're
doesn't
not. They're
really
not a
matter.
player though, are they? They're not part of the player base. You know.
There are a number in the player base.
They're a
They're
download, but I think they are more
they're-
concerned about their concurrent players. You know, their current players. So I don't think
and
those people
most
do
of
matter.
them are made up of people on the Discord, people of the Reddit, and that's just that's like the main hubs. There are plenty of other smaller ones. Like just for example, I know of what's his name? Axis Chronos has his own Discord, right? Which I would assume overlaps a lot with the other Discord, although I imagine most of them are bad. Um, the there's that, and there's probably tons of smaller pockets of the community. I know there's quite a few other Deep Rock Galactic Reddits. Like there's the sexual one. There's the rant one with a Reddit that's just full of people that just had a bad experience and just are really pissed off. It's probably another one, the fashion one, right? You got tons of different other like places, and that's just still on the surface. There's probably tons of small groups of people with just players talking together that like wouldn't. Point is, I don't remember the point. Not the point in any way, shape, or form. I have no idea where this started.
No, I mean we've talked about season 4 doing a lot in the terms of shoring up foundations and adding the sort of older stuff and making it all better overall. And I wonder, and I think this will probably have a better answer for this once you've actually played it. I just wonder how much left they've got to do in that department. If we were to discount perks, though, obviously, right? I feel like you understand why we would not count perks in that department because that's something they're sort of working towards. But we got someone commenting on like the most recent video or something. This update is shaping up to look like more of a touch up on older content in addition with new ones, and I love that. I wonder if they'll fix armor breaking on a lot of the weapons. So something like armor breaking is really a gap, and I thought that's I don't think there's much left though that really needs to change. I think there's not a short list of stuff that arguably needs to change. Like I think escort duty is sort of riding the line between subjective and objective.
I would argue that basically everything needs changing. Like it would not hurt the game at all if every single part of the game got touched up slightly, just somewhere, just for something. Like literally, just any type of changing of content is always good. Like even if they changed Morkite slightly, like made Morkite slightly rarer, how that would affect the mission, that could be really interesting. Like forcing more people to get into the deepest part of the cave.
Maybe
like that.
even looking into a non-linear version of Mine Expedition. Well, no,
Well,
I
I
say
mean,
can't.
but that's like a new idea. That's not a change, is it?
No, okay, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose you're right.
It's
But
literally, I don't know. It's just, I think every single overclock, even the ones they just did, maybe give them a bit of time though, should probably be touched again at some point. Because
But I
you
think
know,
that's more so. That's just saying that the game would benefit from them freshening things up rather than these parts of the game actually making it worse. It's just that they could be used to make it better. I think it's probably a better way of putting
yeah.
it.
Well, I don't
I
think
wouldn't call them thorns in the game side. I would
making the
just
game
call.
worse.
I would call them, things that have potential. Maybe, more so. I think escort duty though is a bit of a thorn, and I'm only bringing this up. I don't want to get into a debate on escort duty, but I think escort duty changes would be something I would love to see as like a wild card addition in season 5, like one of the side things.
It would be something that they wouldn't want to market because that would be the dumbest shit known to man. Like
Well,
say,
it'd be like new K shapes. It'd be that level of addition.
yeah, well, yeah, but not even. They probably wouldn't be in the narrated trailer. Maybe,
Maybe even
like,
not. Yeah,
you
maybe.
wouldn't want to, right? Unless the way they change it is in a way that they could twist as something good. Like that you wouldn't want to say, hey, the game mode that's been in our years for in a game for like years, that has been really shitty. We've now got around to fix
Well,
it.
if you do a Hearthstone themed season, they're kind of going to have to look at escort duty. So then it
Exactly.
might actually
They
work
would-
out for them.
You would be able to slip in the, patching and fixing in that, right? That you're like, oh, the Omeran has grown a lot more diverse in nature, something like that, and like and then just basically like how they fixed the mission would be like what's like new, and like interesting, something like that. But either way, they'd either do that or they'd just slip it under the rug a little bit. Like not entirely, it'll be in the patch notes and everything, and people they'll probably talk about it, but not in the marketing, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose season
Not-
4 it does a lot of that stuff, but I think it's done. I think it's arguably done more in terms of adding things to the game, like adding non-headliner things. I don't think it's actually changed that much. Like, for example, like the sleeveless armor toggle. That's a new idea, but it's still gonna. It's just gonna help. It's what it's doing is actually freshening up something that we already have, which is armor. It's not like we're getting any new armor in season 4, but we're getting a way to make our pre-existing armor look different. I mean, the randomizer is a very big one in terms of spicing up normal gameplay, but it's just completely randomizing your loadout. And yeah, I mean, that seems to be what season 4 is kind of made up of, and I think that's pretty cool. I think the rocket boots are definitively a new thing, though. I mean, obviously they are, but we haven't talked about those that much. And I think I still disagree with the people who are sort of being critical of them, like Shadow Hacksaw. It's just like there's a reason they cut the double jump perk, and I'm just like, yeah, but
it's
they
not
always,
an argument.
but they always
Like,
wanted to add it though.
No, but it's so obviously wrong. Like foundationally, like the perk is absolutely nothing like the power up in the game. Like not in like the actual idea. I just mean genuinely, perks are guaranteed things that you actively will pick and know that you have and will actively use. With the other thing being no way, shape, or form can rely on. Right? It is just so astronomically dumb to not comprehend that the issue wasn't it overtaking the movement, but it was a guaranteed overtaking of the movement. Like you choose on the mission, like or on your thing, you're like, okay, yeah, I don't want to use my mobility tool on this this mission, and you pick that perk, or you would always pick that perk, right? It's not that at all. It's nowhere close to that, and it's dumb. That whole argument is dumb.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons as well they didn't make it an anomaly. I think they really do not want it to be. Obviously, you can't. But if it was an anomaly, for at least for season 4's duration, it probably would have been always available at least once. But in general, I don't think any given anomaly is actually guaranteed to appear on the mission select screen. But I just think they were completely against it being something that you could choose, and also something that you could know that you were going to get. And we sort of talked about how it'd be very easy to add new anomalies just in general, and I still think it is. But if you take either the rocket boots or the randomizer, which are both ideas that are ripe for being anomalies, in fact, they are in practice very similar. They work as anomalies in practice. it would have been arbitrary to make them anomalies, and which is something that also Sniss also acknowledged. He said, He's basically said that I'm not. He said the rocket boots could have been an anomaly, but when you think about it, all of the mutators are Hoxies based, is what he said, which is actually true. I think lore is not a great way to argue against new content in Deep Rock, but that's not what this is either. You look at all the pre-existing mutators, and it's all effects that are out of DRG's hands, right? The only one where it's not that is like low oxygen, where they give you the oxygen tanks to deal with the low oxygen.
It's not inherently true. Warnings, maybe, yeah, but anomalies not true. Boxes has nothing to do with the fact you get double XP in a mission.
No, I guess not. But anomalies are just anomalies, I suppose. So it would have worked, but it still would have been kind of arbitrary. Especially with the drink, where it's like you could have had like a random mission anomaly or like an anomaly that randomizes your loadout, but instead they chose to make a drink out of that, and I think that's more interesting, to be honest. So good on them. And same with the rocket boots, but that's like pretty different. But yeah, maybe it could have been anomaly, but it also wasn't. One more thing I've got to talk about. I made a very strange Reddit post last night that kind of took off. No, sorry, it definitely took off. That 379 upvotes. Got over 100 comments. Basically, I just made a list of everything in season 4, right? Kind of.
I saw that.
Yeah, you probably did. Basically, it was not literally everything. It was everything that was added, right? So it was kind of like it was a combination. I explained it. It's a combination of everything that Ghost themselves have put highlighted. All of the headline editions. That's all of the stuff that you see in the patch notes, plus everything from the MISC patch notes and all the experimental patch notes that I considered to be genuine additions, like the industrial sabotage tweaks or adding rockpox waves in normal missions, stuff like that. I factored it all in, and I ended up with 22 individual points of things that they added. But then it was if you separated all the overclock stuff to be its own points, and if you separated all the enemies as well to be their own additions, then you actually ended up with 35 significant things that they added. And I made a very clear point that it was not meant to be a defense of season 4, and it was also not meant to shoot down people complaining about it. It was literally just an exercise just to see how much is actually in it. And I sort of just welcome people to debate certain things. I got a really weird comment though, and I wonder if I can find it. And it's from someone that we've encountered before. I'm not going to name him. He basically said, I don't really care to read about experimental branches' takes here. Overall, I feel like it sows division and ruins hype for no good reason. If the devs are at all worried about the future of the title, they shouldn't be. Then they should keep the experimental branch closed and not have people publishing about it here. So what? It's don't talk about experimental branch on the Reddit. It's what the fuck? And even then, all the stuff that I brought up from the experimental branch is pretty much just the overclock tweaks, which are all in the main patch notes now. So I win, basically. But yeah, and then I think the most insane comment I got though actually was basically someone they just quoted a bunch of the bullet points, and they were like, "Do you really consider this stuff significant changes?" And it might have gotten downvoted, so it might be hidden actually. Oh no, here it is. It says yeah, he just pointed out a bunch of the bullet points. New mini game on Space Rig and on Power Up boxes. Then Space Rig additions and tweaks, which is one of the things I put, as in the new area and the stuff they did to the window and all of the extra infection. Then randomizer beer, randomize loadouts button, copy paste loadouts, sleeveless armor toggle, new song, the holograms on the litho tools, and also I literally just included a point that was dozens, maybe hundreds of small tweaks. And then he literally was like, you consider these to be significant? What? He put the randomizer beer in there about things that, you consider this to be significant? You a fool? You a fool? That's just concerning. How...
Yeah, it's what content would please someone like that then?
Yeah.
Just another new enemy type that adds nothing.
Like
other than
apparently the new how does it how can like play Deep Rock like actually be a Deep Rock player and be like, oh, a new beer doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. Like a new song means nothing. And also we know that's an ambient track now as well, by the way, just want to point out, which is like it was probably already pretty obvious, but we know that now. So great. That's Journey of the Prospector. Pretty cool song. Yeah, anyway, I might talk more about this post next week. I might even just go through the list. That's the thing. I didn't think that was really right for here. I wanted it to be more about the experimental stuff and sort of just the lead up to season 4, and it has been. Oh no. Oh, whatever. People just got weird like little nitpicks. It's just like manual guidance card isn't a rework; it's a replacement. It's like, yeah, I know. Someone actually, I made one of the points about adding the original, like the old version of the DLC, like the one that got changed, adding the old version of the weapon skin into the performance pass. And then someone called me out. Apparently that was a lie. And he was like, that's a lie. The new framework is the infected one. And then I was just like, no, I specifically said the old weapon paint job from the DLC, and that is true. That is what they're adding. Anyway, yeah, I think that's everything though for today. Unless you want to comment on the new framework, because I was thinking about the infected framework, and I'm not sure how much I like that. To be honest, I'm not sure.
I knew I didn't. I knew I wasn't gonna like that.
I've seen a bit more of it, and it doesn't change the shape of the weapons beyond the infected parts, which do add. They would add a significant amount of they would be a significant like silhouette change to the weapon. But it's forced colors. It's just not a good idea. I'm sorry, it's just not. And if you really want to preserve that, right? I don't care how silly Rockbox looks putting paint on it. I want to do it, but if you want to preserve that, put a toggle in. You can do that. Put a toggle in for forced colors. That's fine. As in, I think this is the first season that this is gonna. I feel like people might just ignore this, but this is gonna be one of the things that I focus on more than anything, because I guess I just do. But I'm going to focus on whether or not it was a good idea to have one of the season frameworks be a forced color one, because I'm already going into it thinking that wasn't a good idea, but we'll see. I don't think my mind's going to change either, but it's just like, I think that is significant. I just get the feeling people want to comment on this, but cool, Rockbox. It's just like, but it doesn't match with anything. It doesn't match with anything. Sometimes I feel crazy.
The woes of caring about cosmetics
in a game that clearly cares about cosmetics a lot, though.
Yeah. Like
the game itself clearly does. So we're not wrong caring about cosmetics. And I feel like we've been treated okay on that front. Aside from that, season 4 though, with things like the sleeveless armors and well, actually, that's it. That's it. I felt like there was something else, like cosmetic related, that was quite significant. But I don't think that's the case. Obviously, I'm talking about new features. Obviously, the DLC getting changed was a pretty big deal, but that's not really what I'm talking about. Which obviously itself isn't like crazy attractive either. I think I'm definitely like it more than the infected frameworks. Either way, I think that's a good time to wrap this up, wouldn't you say? Yeah, you would, trust me. Well, I know you don't have anything else to say. I know you don't.
What if I have a very important thing to say?
Go on, try. Just don't try, just come up with something.
Sabata didn't actually get changed during the experimental, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, because for most people, they got it
fucking
right.
Nailed it.
Well, yeah, nailed. Yeah, I wonder if they really did, though, in the sense that I think it's probably perfectly adequate now, but I still would have liked to see maybe a more unique mod, like to pair with the cryo cannon. And maybe they should have changed bullets a little bit as well. I don't know. like just adding blow through just generically, it's not even really like clearly for the cryo cannon. I feel like they could have done better with that. And as far as I know, people aren't really caring for blow through anyway. They're really just focusing on the corrosion one. So yeah, maybe like, you know, have something that where like it deliberately ricochets between like frozen enemies. That would have been better than just blow through. Anyway, thanks Tyler. That was actually a good final point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please make sure to like, subscribe. I mean, actually, just in general, just thank you for all of the just everyone who's joined the channel recently, I guess.
Yeah, we've got like at least 100 from just the last podcast we've done, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, which a lot to, I guess, to a lot of YouTubers doesn't sound like a lot, but when you can still see, when you don't have a K there instead of actual numbers, it's all pretty noticeable, you know. So, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you on Saturday. We'll see. I'll see you tomorrow certainly, but
I'll be
Toot-
there, I'll just for a bit.
toodaloo, toodaloo, to the loo. I need a piss.
Shock horror.
All right, say goodbye, Tyler.
Goodbye, Tara.
All right, take care, guys.